Join us on Patreon and become part of our journey to uncover history's untold stories. Your support helps us create in-depth content, bring hidden narratives to life, and keep history alive for everyone.
In the highlands of East Africa, where the sun's golden veil rolls over mountain monasteries and sacred groves, Ethiopia harbors spiritual traditions that are as ancient as time itself. Rituals practiced in silence, protected by priestly lineages, enshrouded in a mystique that has long perplexed scholars and spiritual seekers alike. These are the secret rites of the Ethiopian Orthodox Tewahedo Church, a church older than many Western denominations, whose practices predate the Council of Nicaea and whose arcane mysteries have endured untouched through centuries of empire, invasion, and isolation. Far from Rome's marble halls and gilded chapels lies a version of Christianity that evolved independently, nurtured by a deep well of Judaic tradition and monastic discipline. Ethiopia's faith landscape is a mosaic of ancient Hebraic customs, early Christian theology, and indigenous spiritual wisdom, an amalgam that has birthed liturgical rites, mystical practices, and relic-centered ceremonies that have long raised the quiet curiosity of the Vatican and Western theologians. Yet, despite centuries of attempted influence, the Vatican has remained publicly silent on the deeper, more enigmatic practices of Ethiopia's ecclesiastical heritage. One must ask, why? This story begins not in the basilicas of Rome, but in the rock-hewn churches of Lalibela, where barefoot monks chant liturgies older than Latin. Here, the sacred is not spoken of but lived, woven into the movements of priests cloaked in white, carrying processional crosses carved from a single piece of wood, their eyes veiled to protect against the consuming radiance of the Tabot, the Ethiopian counterpart to the Ark of the Covenant. Unlike the Ark of the Covenant of Jewish and Christian fame, the Tabot is not merely symbolic. It is the literal heart of every Ethiopian church, believed to embody the presence of God, so holy that only consecrated priests may gaze upon it. These practices, hidden behind a veil of ritual purity and ancient authority, include the sacred dance of the keen, a form of liturgical poetry infused with double meanings and metaphysical teachings. In monasteries like Demo, accessible only by climbing a sheer cliff with a leather rope, monks live ascetic lives centered on fasting, vigil, and contemplation of texts written in Guizi, an ancient liturgical language older than Latin and Greek. Manuscripts that survive from these institutions speak of the Zemebet, the house of song, where sacred music is taught not as melody, but as spiritual warfare. There is also the lesser-known but strikingly Judaic element of Ethiopian Christianity. Circumcision is practiced on the 8th day. The Sabbath is observed alongside Sunday, and dietary laws mirror those of Leviticus. The Kebra Nagast, an Ethiopian chronicle written in the 14th century, claims that Ethiopia is the new Israel, home to the Solomonic line born of the union between King Solomon and the Queen of Sheba. This theological foundation has led Ethiopian Christians to believe that they are the keepers of divine mysteries lost to the West, mysteries that include the very Ark of the Covenant, said to reside in a chapel in Aksum, guarded by a single monk who never leaves the premises and who is forbidden to speak to anyone but his successors. For centuries, the Catholic Church has maintained a diplomatic yet uneasy relationship with Ethiopia's religious authorities. The Jesuit missions of the 16th and 17th centuries attempted to bring Ethiopian orthodoxy under papal jurisdiction, leading to bloody conflicts and a fierce theological backlash that resulted in the eventual expulsion of Catholic missionaries. Since then, the Vatican has treated Ethiopian Christianity with a paradoxical mix of reverence and reticence, acknowledging its apostolic foundation while refusing to integrate or openly discuss the full spectrum of its secret traditions. This tension was most evident during the pontificate of Pope Pius XI in the early 20th century. While diplomatic efforts were made with Emperor Haile Selassie, the Vatican never publicly recognized the sacred traditions involving the Tabot or the mystical rites surrounding Saint Yared, the father of Ethiopian liturgical music, who is said to have received his melodies in a vision from angels. Nor did it acknowledge the ritual of the Kaides, the Ethiopian Eucharist ceremony, where bread and wine are consecrated not just by the priest but by an entire choir of ordained deacons, whose chant is believed to replicate the harmonies of heaven. One of the most whispered about Ethiopian rituals, never fully addressed by the Vatican, involves the practice of sacred concealment, mystigia, where certain rites are never written down, only orally transmitted within tightly knit circles of monastic elders. Among these are the supposed Solomonic prayers, chants and invocations that allegedly preserve pre-Christian temple rites, repurposed through a Christian lens. It is said that during the Feast of Timkit, when the Tabot is paraded through the streets and immersed in holy water, these prayers are sung under breath, invoking angels, archangels, and the unspoken name of God. Even more controversial is the belief, held quietly within certain Ethiopian circles, that Jesus visited Ethiopia during the so-called lost years of his life. While there is little documentary evidence, the oral tradition is strong enough that some monasteries house icons depicting a youthful Christ among the Ethiopian highlands, learning from the sages and ascetics of the Nile Valley. The Vatican has never commented on these accounts, dismissing them as local legend, yet the persistence of such tales underscores the profound spiritual self-understanding of Ethiopian Christianity. It sees itself not as an offshoot of Roman Christianity, but as a co-equal, or even the original, keeper of divine truth. Moreover, the Ethiopian Book of Enoch, which survived only in Guizi until its discovery by Western scholars in the 18th century, reveals a cosmos teeming with archons, watchers, and fallen angels, concepts echoed in apocryphal texts suppressed in the West. The Church Fathers of Ethiopia never banned these books. They revered them, built sermons upon them, and developed spiritual practices from their apocalyptic visions. Today, while the Vatican regards Enoch as non-canonical, Ethiopia still treats it as sacred scripture. What, then, lies behind the Vatican's silence? Is it doctrinal prudence, a reluctance to endorse a version of Christianity so infused with pre-Christian and non-Roman elements? Or is it something more strategic, an acknowledgement that Ethiopia holds keys to theological depths the West has long forgotten or discarded? Perhaps the most telling silence lies in Rome's lack of comment on the role of women in Ethiopia's spiritual tradition. While women cannot become priests, the Debrats, female monastics, have held roles of extraordinary influence, sometimes as keepers of manuscripts, spiritual advisors, and even visionaries whose prophecies are recorded in monastic annals. The Vatican's traditionalist stance on gender has often prevented it from engaging with such narratives, yet they remain vital within Ethiopia's sacred heritage. As scholars continue to unearth manuscripts and translate Guizi texts into modern languages, the theological and mystical richness of Ethiopian Christianity is slowly being revealed to the world. Yet much remains hidden, protected not just by secrecy, but by sanctity. The Ethiopian Church has no desire for its most sacred rituals to be put on display or dissected in Western theological debate. It guards its mysteries with the same zeal that guards the Ark and Aksum, silently, vigilantly, faithfully. The silence of the Vatican may not be a suppression, but a recognition that within the highlands of Ethiopia lies a Christianity not lost, but preserved, untamed by empire, unswallowed by Rome, unbroken by time.